Today, we're taking a walk on the wild side and talking about commercial real estate. I have the esteemed pleasure of having a one on one conversation with the commercial broker and instructor, Ginger Unger. And if you ask me, she's the utmost authority in commercial real estate. Join us. I have to admit, I've been looking forward to this day. Ginger Unger is a commercial real estate broker, but she's also an incredible real estate instructor for both residential and commercial, as well as designation and certification courses. She has her Certified Commercial Investment Member or CCIM designation, and she has a background in home construction and development. Before she opened her own brokerage in 2005, she was involved in a family business, developing residential and commercial property, industrial warehouses, and hotels. I have personally referred many students to pick up the phone and call her about either getting into real estate as far as the commercial side or even clients to have them contact her. Welcome to the show, Ginger.
Thank you for having me, Robbie. This is quite an honor to be on your Untruth.
Yeah, well, thank you. I'm super excited. I think a lot of people don't know that we met like, 6, 7 years ago, and even how we met. Um,
Exactly.
yeah, we both met in this, it's my opinion, insufferable instructor training class that I had no value out of, but at least I got to meet some really cool people, which I'm very thankful for.
I think at any of those trainings you go to, if you meet one good person, it was worth going. Don't you think?
I absolutely do because, one of the things with teaching is having your own style and relating. And, you've definitely been able to carve out your whole area where people come just take your classes, which I think is awesome.
Thank you.
And you teach currently for, I think, Texas Realtors, as well as a bunch of different title companies across the state. And
I teach for Texas Realtors, many of the associations, many title companies, and even private brokerages.
wow. Yeah. So she's out there teaching everything. What's your favorite class to teach?
And you know what? I think
One.
my favorite class to teach is Commercial Letter of Intent Beginner's Roadmap,
Uh-huh.
because so many of the agents don't realize that we don't go straight to contract. So I really like to teach them how to use that type of form so that they look more professional and prepared. So that's
Yeah.
probably one of my favorite classes because they're just overwhelmed when they see, oh, wait a minute, I didn't know this.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good thing for them to step into stage one.
Do you see a lot of residential agents wanting to convert over to commercial?
Oh, absolutely. Especially when inventory was so tight and,
Uh-huh.
we're writing 25 contracts to get one deal and showing 200 houses. Commercial was looking very attractive to them.
Right. It's like what many people who are even practitioners on the real estate and the residential side don't realize is that they're completely two different beasts.
Oh,
From
absolutely.
Yeah, I have only done a couple of sales in commercial over my extensive number of years, and I am definitely not an expert and steer clear of commercial because there are those people who, like Ginger, who know it inside and out.
Well, I always tell the newer agents that listen, there's going to be people that are going to be kind to you. I'm a kind commercial broker, but then there's going to be others that are going to walk the floor with you because they know very quickly you don't know what you're doing. So I
Yeah,
always tell you, you've got to get yourself trained so that not only are they taking care of themselves, but also their client. They have a fiduciary duty to make sure that client is well represented.
yeah, I've sold a couple of of office parks, style office space shared. And it seems like with a lot of the commercial brokers that I met during that, it was the issue of having a stink, if you will, of residential. They don't like to work with you. It's like you are outside of your area.
I
What if-
do get that question a lot, Robbie. This is probably my number one question in every class with a lot of residential agents is why won't they call me back? Why don't they answer my emails? Why won't they let me show the property? I get those questions over and over, and I teach them in my class some things to do to help prevent some of that. And I tell them a lot of times the reason that you're calling could have been found on some of these sites. The questions you're asking were already there for you to find. So they get a little bit irritated as soon as they're calling up and asking something that was already on their flyer on LoopNet or CoStar. They're already signals up. They don't even have those two listing platforms.
Right.
And they should be doing their fiduciary duty, which is no matter what call comes in from no matter who, they should be taking those calls and they should be answering them. So sometimes I shame my own peers because who is our fiduciary duty to? It's our clients. So sometimes they need a little shaming themselves.
Right. And it comes into that, track. Texas Real Estate Commission calls it that geographic competency. And that really affects not only just location, but it also affects subject matter. And we have to we have to know what we're doing before we jump in and represent a client without someone overseeing or helping us, mentoring.
That's exactly right. I always tell them it's not just about, am I in the right city? It's, have I ever sold an industrial building? Have I ever sold a hotel? And if you don't know what you're looking for, number one, in your due diligence package, you could do some real harm to your buyer and your seller. And I try to be home to them. A lawsuit on a commercial deal is going to be very expensive.
Yeah.
Because remember, we're not covered with E&O if we step out of our expertise.
Right. Yeah. I think that what the average consumer doesn't understand is the amount of demographics that are done when a commercial entity comes in and tries to purchase either a piece of land or a building to put a business there. What level of research that they do to make sure that they're going to reach their target customer base.
Oh, it's a huge amount. I mean, I use a thing called Site to Do Business,
Uh-huh.
which if I, just to give you an example, if I'm working with a dentist, he will have me locate every dentist within 5 miles. I'll have to map that. I'll put it on there. I'm also looking at the sales of the other dentist in that area. If he's an orthodontist, I'm drilling it down to orthodontist. But I'm also looking at traffic patterns. How many people go down that road a day? What is the income? Is it, 3 or 4 people to a household? Is it single? I mean, there's a lot that goes into this.
Yeah. And I don't think people actually know that. And one of the areas that I get a lot of questions is, maybe a husband and wife are buying a house and they're wanting to do a daycare there. And even just on the residential side, doing an in-house daycare, there's so many things that they have to really check out. I can't even imagine the level of research that you have to do commercially because
Oh,
those are some
absolutely.
big dollars that are riding there.
And I always tell them if they're seasoned investors, they're going to have the team in their office and the development team that does this. But if they're brand new at this, they're depending on us as agents and brokers to lead them down the right path. And we have to have a ton of references and vendors. So I'm like telling them, put away your residential vendors. You're going to need a whole new database of commercial vendors.
Right.
So closers. We also need appraisers. We need geotechs, environmental phase one. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. So
Yeah.
we're not going to be using the same people that you guys use.
Right.
When I do a residential deal, I'll tell you sometimes I'm like, holy smokes, I need to call somebody. And I don't do them very often at all because I only do them when it's a client that says, I really need you to do it because I try to refer it out. Trust me.
Yeah. For a great number of years, my family had a property management company, and within that, we had entities that we owned wholly, and a lot of them were commercial. And so I got a whole lot of leasing experience on the commercial aspect. But I always found that I liked the residential side so much better because there were emotions in those decisions instead of it just being a rate of return and return on investment and, the numbers. And then everybody was gone at 5 o'clock. There was no emotion and like, we got to have this house kind of thing.
Oh, there's zero. Well, I teach my class. There is a lot of no emotion in this. It's all transactional. Is it making the right IRR? Is it going to going to give them the return they're looking for and appreciation, and how long are they going to hold it. But not to be fooled. Occasionally we do have somebody that's a little bit emotional. I have one client, I've been working with him for years. Everything has to be within a 5-mile radius of his house, in his office. It has to be an A-class property. It has to look a certain way. It has to have a certain feel. He wants to go touch it every weekend. So he's a rare bird. But there are people out there. I have some that'll tell me, I'm not feeling it here. I just don't feel it here.
Yeah.
So there is some emotion, but they're a rarity.
Yeah.
It's
And
just
intuition, I guess.
or do they not?
Yeah. So you will actually, it sounds like you have to bird dog a lot of properties more so than just what a residential agent would do.
Well, I tell my classes, I hardly ever sell anything that's listed. My job is to go find unlisted properties. Because what you need to understand is when you are an investor and you're seasoned, you already have a LoopNet account and a CoStar account and a Crixie account. And they will literally say to me, if I had $1 for every time I heard this, if it's on LoopNet or CoStar, don't show it to me. I've already seen that. They don't want to hire us for that. They want
Right.
to hire us for our connections and things that are off market and being able to go and reach out to people and ask them if they'll sell their properties to these investors. So I try to tell these agents that are coming in, it's not going to be like you just get a list off a LoopNet and boom, you hand it to them. They've already seen that. Now, maybe if they're new, you probably could do that with new investors, but the seasons one, absolutely not. It's a
Yeah.
rarity.
And it seems like it would take a lot of time to develop those vendors and those relationships with other commercial brokers, as well as really being comfortable to go out to existing property owners that may not be represented by someone to find that property.
I tell them if cold calling in your thing, this ain't your business because you are going to be cold calling. You are going to have doors slammed in your face. You know, the old story about if you offer enough money, people will sell. That's not necessarily true. There are people, it's not about the money, just like in residential. There are some businesses, they don't care what you offer, and they're not leaving.
Right.
You really have to work hard at developing your relationship with them and showing them how it's beneficial for them to sell their property to your client. And sometimes it's a rough road up that hill.
Yeah, I would think that a key site and commercial can make or break a business.
Oh, it's all about location, love location. If you're retail, I would say that. Now, if you're office, if you need a big presence, let's say you're a title company, presence is really important to a title company. So they typically want to be on the bottom floor, they want big signage. But you know, if let's say you're making dental implants, maybe that's not so important to you because you're just manufacturing dental implants. So it really depends on what is the business and what are they look is it a destination business or is it something you walk by or you drive by and you go back and go to that business? But location on the retail side is, it can be detrimental if you pick the wrong place.
Oh, yeah. I'm always amazed when I have these conversations with my agents when we're out running around either San Antonio or Austin or some of the other cities. It's like when we see a Costco, we're always looking for a Trader Joe's. It's like they have the same type of search criteria because it's like within like a mile or something. We jump on the phone and start looking for the closest Trader Joe's. It's like they're like not far from each other.
We call that tenant mix. And if you pay attention to, like, let's just say my husband builds 10,000 square foot shopping centers. Those are a real call for investors. If you look, you're going to have you were having dry cleaners, but nobody dry cleans their clothes now because we're all working in our pajamas. But
Right.
when we were not working in suits and all that, dry cleaners were one of the number one things you would see in a small shopping center. Go to your liquor store, you're going to have your nail salon, then you're going to have either a pizza shop or an actual sandwich shop. And then what else are we? Maybe a state farm. So you got to think about that. As a woman, I'm picking out my dry cleaning. I'm getting my nails done. Probably going to get a bottle of wine. And then I'm not cooking tonight because I might ruin my nails. So I'm going to get my pizza. So as y'all drive by 10,000 square foot centers, take a look. That type of tenant mix is repeated over and over. It might be
We're paying attention.
like, what's that one? What's a John sandwiches or whatever it is. It might be a sandwich shop instead of a pizza shop. It might be a drive-through like Dunkin' Donuts, but there's some kind of food element, and they don't want them to park and stay because there's not enough parking in those small shopping centers. So it's
Right.
gotta be a quick service in and out. But just pay attention to that.
That's funny because as you're saying that, I'm thinking about the place that I used to go get my hair cut, and there was a Jimmy John's on one side, there was an
Yeah.
insurance agent, and there was, a dry cleaners all in the same I think it was like 5 units. I mean, sure, they were all pretty big because the salon was pretty big, but 5 unit shopping center. And,
Mhm.
it that's interesting. I've never really thought about that, but now I'm thinking about it. I was like, it wasn't a nail salon, but next time I go get a manicure or something, get my toes done, I'm gonna have to look to see what's around it. 'Cause
Well, and here's what I tell the agents that are getting into this and are super excited to pick up an assignment to lease out a new shopping center. Well, number one, you're leasing out a empty lot because unless it's paid for by cash, Roby, the lender insists it's 50% pre-leased. So you're standing in an empty field with a sign with a rendering of a shopping center that's coming, and of course, there's a shopping center across the street or right down the road that has that same exact tenant mix. So now who are you going to find to go in your shopping center if you're right across the street and all of those little niches are already filled? So I tell them it's harder than you think because a nail salon might go in there, but the other liquor store doesn't want to be across the street from his competitor.
correct.
So you've got to really think about, okay, what mix am I putting in here that's going to work? And they really sit there and look at me and I'm like, you really got to think about taking those assignments because if you don't have a lot of connections with tenants, it is going to be tough. You've got to already put them in other locations and now they're looking for their second or third or fourth location.
Yeah,
So
maybe moving up to
it's a long term listing. And sometimes I tell them, you're not going to get this done in a year. I mean, it takes a while to get this done.
yeah, that's a big time commitment and, a long time for even an agent payout if you even consider that because, you're putting these deals together and it's not the average 30-day turnaround or 60-day turnaround.
Oh, well, I'm closing something in 10 days. I've been working on this project for 3 years.
3
3
years.
years. That's not uncommon. So yesterday was the last day of the feasibility, so I did the happy dance up and down my driveway. Now, does that mean that something couldn't go wrong? No, because
Yeah.
I have had them walk off and close it. So I'm pretty confident it's going to go through, but I've spent 3 years replatting this property, getting it ready to sell. I mean, it's a long journey.
Yeah, can't even imagine taking 3 years working on one project like that.
Well, they're not all 3 years, but never. If it's 30 days, that's like a very rare deal.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Really
not
nice
saying it can't happen, but it's not going to be your
tip.
average typical deal.
Yeah. What's your favorite aspect of commercial real estate? Do you enjoy the teaching more than working the deals? Because I would imagine I don't imagine, I completely know that one of the things that makes you brilliant in the classroom is all your experience and that fact that you continue on a daily basis to work within the commercial industry. What's your favorite aspect?
I think I really enjoy helping people learn, is this for them or is it not for them? Because there's been many in my class after they hear the expenses and the timelines and what you need to do for education, they'll just say, this was a great class, but I now know this is not for me. Others are gun ho and moving forward. And I look back, gosh, a million years ago when I started my CCIM, designation, nobody sat you down and said, hey, by the way, did you know that the two listing platforms are going to cost you well over 1,000 a month easily?
Yeah.
And they're going to charge you per listing. And, oh, that sign you put up might cost $3,500. It would have been great 25 years ago if somebody set me down and say, this is totally different. It's not going to be like your MLS dues where you can turn it on and off. Because when you make a commitment to LoopNet and CoStar, it is for 1 year
Yeah.
and they will after your firstborn if you don't pay them.
I
So
bet.
I tell them, if you don't pay them, they don't care that you don't have a listing. They will put it on your credit. They will come after you. So I think that sometimes kind of worries them. You know,
Is it CoStar that owns LoopNet now, or is it
oh
flipped
yeah,
the other way?
I did. But the other thing I tell them, Robbie, if you have a very seasoned investor,
Uh-huh.
the one I was telling you about that buys the industrial properties from me, when I walk in, he has TVs all around his office, flat screens. And every listing platform I have, he has up on those screens showing me. He's like, "Oh, this is what you have on Craigslist, and this is what you have on LoopNet, and this is what you have on CoStar, and this is what you have on Total Commercial." And he actually would say to me, "You think you can get a better shot at that warehouse?" I'm like, "Those are professionally taken photos, and I can only make a warehouse look so good." But he would say, "I think we could get a better angle." So the ones that are really seasoned, they have the same accounts you do, and they expect you to have all of those. So I always tell the new agents, remember, if you get an investor who expects you to have 6 different platforms, it may not work for you if you only do one deal a year. So you
Yeah.
really got to be ready to jump in and do a lot of business to cover your expenses.
With so many different, areas in commercial, how many transactions would you think, like an agent in particular, because we're talking a lot about agents, but how many would you think that they would need to do with a mentor before they should feel confident to go out on their own?
They should work with a mentor for a year or two.
A year or
They
2?
really should. I mean, they're not going to know. These classes are wonderful, but I'm not stepping them through a contract and every feasibility part that they need because each transaction is different. So
Yeah.
for me to say, okay, you're going to need all of these vendors on every transaction, that's not quite true. So you really need a mentor to look over your contracts, make sure you led them to the right feasibility documents and vendors, and then the timeline. And here's a good example. I was having people writing a letter of intent and giving them 48 hours to answer. They'll just throw that in the trash. You can't expect a commercial seller to give you an answer in 48 hours. They're just not going to do it.
Right.
There may be somebody out there, but your offer is going to the bottom of the pile if you do that. So I try to teach them, 7 to 10 days is, even pretty slight. And ask the other agent, what kind of timeline do you need? Because they may be out of state. There may be 3 or 4 partners, but I know you guys are used to putting, 24 hours, 48 hours, but that's totally not what we do.
Yeah, and
So
in
just
some
teach them, hey, you better get that out of there. And, putting in $100 for independent consideration will get you in the trash can. So I try to teach them what's typical. Not every deal's typical. So, we got to look at it case by case.
right. And I guess the market has a lot to do with it, and, what is the competition in that area where the commercial space is located or the land.
Right.
Mm.
And I also tell them too, how long are you asking them to take their property off the market? I give them an example when I sell to like home developers. If they're wanting that property off the market for 6 months, those can go as high as $100,000 for the independent consideration. And sometimes they don't get that money back.
Yeah, I know many years ago, it seems like many years ago, I had a commercial property that was on the market, and I put it in MLS, and, I put it on, LoopNet at the time, and, I know that I got hit with like 113%, property tax increase from
Mm.
the ad, because they said, "Well, you say, and you're a real estate broker, that this property is worth this, so we're gonna raise the taxes." Do you see a lot of people not want their properties listed on LoopNet or CoStar or some,
Well, what
looking
you'll find on LoopNet is a lot of times there's no price revealed. You have to call the broker for the price. And I teach my students that do not put those properties on MLS because it's going to give the sales price and the sold price. And unless your seller has given you permission to do that, do not go off and do that. And like you said, even if the property didn't sell, the taxing authorities are trying to raise these people's taxes just on the sales price. So if you take a close look in LoopNet, you'll see a lot of properties don't even have a sales price.
right, you have to call. So you just answered my next question. What I was gonna say is, how do you feel about commercial properties being the MLS? And
I think that's between the seller and the agent. But what I'm finding when I'm teaching these classes, the agents don't know enough yet to even know they should be asking. They're just putting them on there and not even realizing that that seller didn't even have a clue they were going to do that.
Right.
So I teach them, listen, you can have that conversation with them, but you need to make sure you tell them the sales price will be revealed, the name of the who's selling is going to be revealed, also the sold price. And I said, you better get it in a writing. They wanted you to do this because most of them don't. And I also speak to them about a lot of times they don't want the tenants or the employees to know the business is for sale. We put something on MLS. It is broadcast news, isn't it?
It is. It really is. And
So there's a lot of different reasons they don't want them on there.
I think San Antonio Sabor, MLS is the only one that really has a good, private MLS within the MLS that allows other agents to see it and not other, not be out to the consumer as easily. And, I think that's been beneficial, but, keeping it off the MLS is probably a good idea without their authority for sure. Let's switch and let's think about a consumer for a minute. Let's say a consumer called you and they were wanting to buy a commercial property that they have found and there's a business attached to it. What is that something that a typical commercial agent could do? Is that something that they would have to refer out and have another party help them with something? Or, really, where do you stand in, hey, I found this business and it's the real estate and the business. How can you help me?
I have business brokers.
Mm.
So every commercial real estate agent has business brokers on their database because I'm not qualified to tell you what your Mexican restaurant is worth. I'm not qualified to tell you what your dentist practice is worth. So I tell these agents all the time, selling a business is not real estate. That is out of our scope. We should stay in our lanes. And I do tell them this big problem with bringing in a business broker is their fees are not regulated by anybody. They're not regulated by the state. And a lot of times when you have a business broker and a real estate agent, the fees get so high, the compensation gets so high that they'll back away from you. So I found a lot of times I will refer to a business broker and then he will refer things to me when it's just a real estate sale
Right.
because it's not my scope of expertise to value a business. And there's some businesses I'm very entrenched with. I know hotel, I know C stores, but people hide money. People cook the books is what I like to say. And not everybody, but if somebody does, we need an expert to know, okay, wait a minute, this doesn't quite make sense. So
Right.
here's a good example. Car washes used to be all cash. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember
And
that.
they were the names before debit cards.
I like
They
the
were
buy the
cash.
card now. Yeah.
So when they would go to sell a car wash, they would say, well, I make blah, 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 but I only turn in blah, blah, blah to the IRS. Well, when you go to sell something, only what you turn into the IRS is what anybody's going to believe you make, right? Well, the IRS got smart and said, hold on, we all know you're lying. So we're going to go by your water consumption and then your soap products. And however many gallons of water you use per month in year, and however many soap products you buy, we're going to determine what your sales must have been. So there are people that are expertise at figuring these old car washes out. If they told you they made whatever they said, and they looked at the gallons of the water, they looked at the soap purchases, they would be able to quickly ascertain where you really being on the money with what you're saying.
Wow. That's
And same thing for restaurants, dental practices. I mean, you name it. But I always tell these students, we're not qualified to figure out what a business is worth.
yeah, that can be kind of scary,
Well, I just had a call the other day from an agent and he said, I need to know where I can put the business sale in the TR forms. I said, well, if you go down the TR forms, there is no business sale form. And there's a reason for that. And what it was a daycare that he was selling with the property. And he said the new buyer was going to take over the business. And I said, well, do you have anything that says they're purchasing the name? They're taking over the employees. They will be taking over the contracts with the daycare, people that come in. Nothing. And I said, well, then how would this work? The guy buys the business and he has nothing documented that says he maintains the name, he maintains the employees, he maintains the actual customer base. I said, do you see how this could go all kinds of wrong?
Much
And
less the employees and
he's still
customers.
asking me before it's over, but where is the form? I'm like, you're not hearing me. There is
Well,
no form.
yeah,
So this is what scares me is they're not doing anything maliciously. They just don't know they should not be doing that. I mean,
yeah.
he's not being malicious. He just doesn't.
Yeah, no, that's completely it. And you don't know what you don't know. And that really, to me, is the definition of competency. It's really knowing what you know what you need to figure out and being able to find out and even ask the right questions.
And here's a good example on multifamily. You can look at what they say they're making, but generally 40 to 50% of what they say they're making is expenses. So you've got to know what does a normal multifamily unit, what is the percentage of that income really go to expenses? And that just takes years to figure out these different things. But I still would bring in a broker, depending on what it is,
Right.
selling with this.
If you were a consumer in today's market looking for a commercial broker like yourself, what would you advise them or suggest that they look for other than, of course, a CCIM designation, but what other, what should they be looking for or questions even that they should be asking whoever they, y-
If they don't have the designation behind the name, of course, I know you're aware of this, but if you have a CCIM, you have to turn in a portfolio of a lot of transactions, dollar wise, before you can even obtain your CCIM. So most of them that are seasoned, they know that. So they
yeah,
know if you've done some deals. But if you're just working with someone that does not have anything, I would be asking them, how many commercial transactions have you completed? They've been multifamily, if they've been industrial, whatever they are looking to purchase, I would ask how many of these types of transactions have you completed? How are your clients? Do you have any testimonials from your clients that I could talk to? Because just getting somebody blindly, you may get somebody, because I've already seen this with what I started teaching. They will go out and do it, whether they know what they're doing or not. And I mean, I actually had a lady that she was 2 months into the business and her first transaction is commercial. Now that's spooky, right?
it is.
And I'm like, so I don't know what they're telling these people. I have no idea. But a lot of times the people have sold them a house, an agent sold them a house. So they're very comfortable with them. And they said, well, I want you to find me a building. And that's great if you have the competence to do it. But if you don't, you really need to partner with someone or refer it. And I always tell these agents, you can still make money. You can refer it for a fee. And I used to do this for people. I would tell them, you want to work the deal with me? I'll let you walk the deal with. So
Yeah.
not everybody's going to do that, though. I just want you to know, not
Yeah.
every broker's going to do that.
Yeah. For a residential agent, unless you really know what's going on, and most don't, it's even hard just to find a small commercial lease property for some of these people that we've sold homes to that, they want to get a business outside of their house now because they've grown and they call us and we have that relationship. And a lot of people are hesitant to refer and try to, not say, hey, I only do residential. You're going to find somebody commercial. And here's who I would, start talking with.
Well, and I tell people all the time, if I can refer residential, you better believe I do. Unless it's for me, I'm buying it for myself. I don't want to do a bad job for anyone. And I don't want to harm anyone. Do I know every single neighborhood? No, I do not. So unless I really know where they're wanting to buy, I just tell them I'm not the person for you.
We've covered so many aspects about an agent getting into the field. If you had somebody who wanted to buy a commercial property today and they called you and they have not started the process, they're brand new into looking at a commercial property, what would you tell them they need to do to get their ducks in the row to make a successful transaction?
First of all, we really need to find out, do they have the money for the down payment? Because this is so different if they're doing lending. Number one, are they buying cash or are they lending? Because a lot of people have a real misnomer about what people need down on commercial. Right now, it's running between 35 and 50% down, depending on who you are. So here's a perfect example. I have a pharmacy client. I've done 3 locations for him.
Hmm.
His very first location, I took him to every lender I had. He had been a pharmacist for 15 years for a huge chain. No one, Robbie, would loan him anything, nothing. So when he completed his building and opened his doors and actually made Pharmacy of the Year in New Braunfels 2 or 3 years in a row, guess who beats on his doors now trying to give him money?
Every
But
bank out there.
every bank out there. But a lot of people don't understand if you don't have a background in whatever you're trying to purchase, the banks will shy away from you. They may not even loan you the money. Now, if you're just trying to buy an investment and you have not bought any investments in the past and have no track record, the down payment's going to go up considerably. It could be as high as 50%. So I try to sit them down and ask them, have they been to a lender? Do they understand this is not like buying a residential investment? The down payment is much higher. Are they prepared for that? And I tell them if they've been working with a lender for residential investments, maybe they should go back to that lender. And I give them 2 or 3 of my lenders and I say, you really need to sit down with them because let's see what you are capable of purchasing. And sometimes it's a matter of they might have to go to a hard money lender because they're
Yeah.
just not qualified enough yet.
So the market's not that easy for them to get in to start in, the commercial industry to you really just
If
start
they
to.
If they don't just to give you an example, when I'm doing a sale, my actual sellers, I will have to get a bio from the buyer. They'll wanna know how many buildings do they own already? Where are they located at? They'll wanna have because remember, we don't have pre-qual letters. We will
Right.
ask line of credit letter from the bank or proof of funds if they're gonna pay cash. They'll wanna know, if you're a school teacher and now you wanna make donuts, what makes you think you can do donuts now? They will shy away from those people because they'll say, you taught school for 30 years. I'm not sure you really understand. You're going to be up at 3 in the morning making donuts, So landlords and even sellers are not as worried. But if I am a landlord, I'm very concerned about your experience in that type of business being successful because if you're not successful, my center's not successful. And it makes
Right.
the other tenants have an issue. So they're very leery of that.
Yeah, because you want every business in a center to be successful so that it can help generate and drive business to the others.
Exactly. And if one, we call it going dark, which means there's nobody there, it kind of drags the other tenants down. So you'll find that the really experienced landlords, they know what businesses make it and don't make it. Restaurants is one of the toughest businesses to put in if they're brand new because their success rate is not great. I don't know if you know, but it's not great. So
Yep.
it's 50
Restaurants
50
and
at
bars.
best. And a lot of times at year 3 to 5, they go out because they picked the wrong location. Because, you've got to remember if this is your first restaurant, you're probably not going to get class A great location because they won't take a chance on you. So you may be over in a different part of town and you did okay, but you still just couldn't get enough business. So you end up going out at year 3 to 5. There's some real statistics of that in bars. So the landlords are very careful on those type of businesses.
Yeah, because I know there's a lot of development and a lot of bars even in downtown Austin presently
Oh,
that are,
yeah.
being shipped out, moved out, shut down because they're looking at doing a whole lot of new developments in there, especially as our downtown grows. And I'm sure as other downtowns around the nation grow, there's a lot of that change. And a lot of those bars and some of those restaurants that have had the local following that's kind of helped them, are having trouble being misplaced.
And if you think about it, everybody's so used to going to 6th Street and all those other streets to, just walk down and eat and have a drink and shop a little. I hope that doesn't completely go away in Austin because that'll really kill the charm of downtown.
Yeah, there's a lot of.
Nobody's strolling the streets at the real skyscrapers, in my opinion.
I agree, and a lot of that and the old Austin that I knew and loved has, changed a lot, and it's, been replaced with, concrete and condominiums for a lot of that area. But
And that's great, but I mean, the draw to downtown Austin is those shops and those eateries and those bars and the nightlife. So I think that, considering they're doing mixed use with condos, office, and retail, I think they're gonna have to be very careful of not getting rid of what brings people there.
yeah, nobody wants to live above a bar or a nightclub. It just
Yeah.
doesn't seem to work. So yeah, it would just be kind of crazy. So what's your outlook for an let's say the rest of the year? Are you going to focus a lot on teaching? You going to work with clients? Are you going to be more selective with your clients? Or what are you really thinking the world of Ginger is going to look like for the rest of 2022?
I'm Here's what I'm at the point in my life, as we all know, I'm a little bit older than Robbie. So at this
Not
point
much,
in my life, I'm very selective of who I work with. They're generally clients I've had for 20 plus years. The unfortunate thing, Robbie, because I'm getting older, so are they.
right?
Some of them are like cashing out. Some of them are putting things in trust for their children, grown children. So I'm very selective about new clients coming in. I'm looking at, is this a doable deal for me? How much time am I going to spend on it? And I really do enjoy teaching. I'm going to continue to do both. Am I out actively seeking new clients? Not as much as I was.
Yeah,
I'm just trying to stay alive with my base of clients I've had for years.
yeah.
And what I've found to Robbie is I'm getting their children now, which I guess is a good thing.
That's a good thing. As
Yeah.
long as they go home and you don't have to raise them.
They're grown. I should say grown children.
Yeah,
So,
no, that
but
makes sense.
it's really kind of fascinating to know the parents like I do, and then now I'm working with the 30 to 40 something, and some of them are exactly like their parents, and some are like way on the other spectrum. So it's
Really?
been very interesting.
Yeah, that's kind of fun there.
Yeah,
If you want to find one of Ginger's classes or Ginger's contact information, if you would like to contact her about possibly becoming a client or otherwise, it's going to be in the show notes below. Feel free to, reach out to her, and she's the best in my book.
thank
So
you, Robbie.
I have no question about that. Thank you, Ginger, for being part today.
Oh, thanks for inviting me.
Love it.